It's UFC 219 on pay-per-view this Saturday. It's Christian Cyborg versus Holly Holm for the featherweight title. Yay! Happy holidays, everyone. Happy New Year to all of you. It's the MMAfighting.com UFC 219 preview. I'm Ariel, Helwani. That is Shaun Al-Shatti. We are here in Las Vegas, just hours away now from the UFC's year-end event. It goes down on Saturday night at the T-Mobile Arena. We're standing right outside of it. And of course, it is headlined by Chris Cyborg versus Holly Holm for the UFC Women's Featherweight title, one of the most anticipated female fights in mixed martial arts history. Two of the very best. Shaun, we are here. We were here 2 months ago for UFC 216. I'm just curious right off the bat. Historically, the year-end events have had a lot of buzz. And of course, what happened in October with the shooting outside the Mandalay Bay, that affected 216. It was a somber atmosphere. We spoke about that. Here we are a little over 2 months later. How would you describe the buzz for this year-end event?
I think it's existent. I mean, you could feel it, certainly. I think it pales in comparison to year-end events in the past. I mean, I just look back to last year when we were here for the Ronda Rousey versus Amanda Nunes fight, Dominic Cruz, Cody Garbrandt. There was a lot of hype around that card. There was a lot of weirdness around that card, but there was definitely, you could feel that one, I think, more than you can this. But it is still, you know, we've lost some fights, but it's still a great card. I mean, you got Carlos Condit, Khabib's coming back against Edson Barboza, main event, of course. There's a lot to look forward to.
There's a lot to chew on. It's a festive atmosphere. Usually is around, you know, the end of the year, New Year's here in Las Vegas. Curious about the crowd. We'll see tomorrow night. But I do believe that this is one of the very best female fights in UFC history, in MMA history, I should say. Really, I mean, this is two of the best. I think Chris Cyborg is the greatest of all time. And I think if Holly Holm wins, she would become the greatest female fighter of all time. And I say fighter, not MMA fighter, because of her boxing resume. Dana White said that earlier this week. I agree with him. Do you agree with that assessment?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she said when she came to MMA, she wanted to be the first person in general to win titles in both boxing and MMA. She's already done that.
Yeah.
If she wins on Saturday, she would become the first person in boxing and MMA to win titles in multiple divisions. And the resume with which she would have done it with, taking out basically both sides of the WMMA coin over the course of the last, several years. Yep. Ronda Rousey, Chris Cyborg, I think you can definitely, there's hard to make a case against her not being the greatest female combat sports athlete at that point.
This is the featherweight title that we should have gotten back in February in Brooklyn. This is the one that everyone wanted to see. And it's an interesting fight because Chris Cyborg has been dominant for so long, though I do feel, and correct me if you feel otherwise, I do feel like she has been less dominant as of late. And that's not taking anything away from Tanya Evinger and some of her previous opponents, but I do feel like now was the perfect time for Holly Holm to fight her. And I don't think it's a coincidence that she's fighting her now. I think Holly Holm was in attendance at 214 and said, you know what, now's a good time to fight her for whatever reason. Do you think that she is now, not ripe for the taking, but if there was ever a time to upset her, maybe it's now. Maybe it's this far into her run, into her UFC career, into everything. She's fought so many times. And also, let's look at the resume. She hasn't fought anyone this tough since maybe Marloes Coenen, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would even go farther back a little bit because, I mean, even Marloes Coenen the second time, I don't know what version of Marloes Coenen that was. Although it's interesting to me that you think, or that you say that, she's looked less dominant. I think other people may have said that she's looked more patient. She may have evolved her style.
Okay.
Although maybe both are true.
Right.
In which case, I still think, I mean, stylistically, the way these two women play into each other, there's certainly a path to victory there for Holly. And I think you're right. I think she is picking this moment purposefully. I think she sees, little holes in Chris that she can exploit.
And so when you talk about Holly Holm, she's had sort of an up and down UFC run, right? I mean, even her debut against Raquel Pennington wasn't anything to write home about. And of course, she shocks the world against Ronda Rousey, looked good early on against Miesha Tate, and then of course faltered late. Followed that up with maybe her worst performance against Valentina Shevchenko. I thought she beat Jermaine Durandamy, started slow against Bethe Correia, but ended in a fantastic way with one of the great knockouts of 2017. Is it possible that Holly Holm maybe fights down to the competition, that when the moment is so big, that's when she truly rises to the occasion, and maybe that's a reason to like her going into this fight?
You know what? I think there's certainly something there. We were talking about this a little bit off camera. And that trend exists. Just if you kind of follow her career, even in boxing. I mean, when she got knocked out in boxing, she came back and had a spectacular performance against the same woman that knocked her out. And you look at the Ronda Rousey fight and the way she handled that fight, and then again like the Betch Correia fight, and all these different like little steps in her career. It certainly seems like she's one of those, like in sports teams, we always use that comparison of a team that plays down to the competition or will rise to the occasion. She seems like someone who will rise to the occasion.
You talk about paths to victory for Holly. Share some of them with us, please.
Sure. I mean, I think we spoke about it at the beginning of this. Chris Cyborg has not faced someone with the skill set of Holly in a long time, if ever, maybe. Holly's just defensive. She has never faced someone so defensively sound, first of all, as Holly. And Holly's footwork and just the way that she approaches the game. I think a lot of women go in there scared against Cyborg. And understandably so, considering what they're up against. Basically 10, 12, 13 years of dominance, utter dominance. I don't think Holly's going to be afraid. She's been in big spots like this before. And like I said, she has the wherewithal, the footwork, the defensive capabilities to kind of make this a more interesting, different fight than I think we've ever seen Chris in.
What I love about this fight also is there's so many different little subplots to it.
Sure.
Cyborg's relationship with the UFC, re-signing recently, the state of the featherweight division. It almost feels like it lives and dies with Cyborg and her success. Holly trying to make history, not only the first woman in UFC history to hold the title in 2 different weight classes, she'll be the first woman to beat Ronda Rousey and Chris Cyborg, and that's a nice little feather in her cap. And the up and down that she's experienced throughout her career. And even like, think about a year ago this time, exactly this time, here we were for Ronda Rousey, Amanda Nunes. Cyborg was under suspension. And she had to go through all of that. Now here she is headlining this card. There's just so many little different angles. And oh, by the way, this is Holly Holm's first time back in Las Vegas since that loss to Miesha Tate. So she can exercise those demons. And so the big question is, does she exercise those demons on Saturday night? Does she pull off the upset because she is the betting underdog?
Man, the whole week I've waffled back and forth. It's just so hard to pick against Chris after what we've seen over the course of length of time that we've seen it. Like we said, there are certainly paths to victory for Holly. I don't know that you could say that about past Cyborg opponents, especially lately. I just can't bring myself to pick against Chris. I want to so badly because I feel like it could happen, but I just can't. I just can't. I have to go. I'm going with Chris, but I think it's going to be a kind of a strange fight and maybe an unexpected fight. I think it's going to be very slow to begin with. I think it might not be a crowd-pleasing fight to begin with. I think Holly's going to be on her bicycle a lot, keeping that distance, keeping Chris, pursuing her, kind of playing the matador to the bull. There's a way for Holly to win 3 rounds definitely against Chris. I can't bring myself to pick it, so I'm going Chris.
You're going Chris by decision.
Maybe I'll go TKO round 4.
Round 4, interesting. Earlier in the day, they held a press conference for UFC 220, and they called Stipe Miocic the baddest man on the planet, and they were fighting, they're going to be fighting, I should say, Ngannou and Miocic for that title. I think you can make the claim that Cyborg and Holly Holm are fighting for the baddest woman on the planet title. Absolutely. And I'd love to see them use that. You can use that, UFC, free of charge. Go for it. I want this fight to feel bigger, and it should feel bigger. And it's not feeling that way for me. And maybe I put too much stock into this stuff, but it should feel bigger. It's such a great fight. This is maybe the best. Joe Rogan was going on and on about how Nunes-Shevchenko was the greatest fight in female MMA history, and that didn't feel authentic and real to me. This feels like the greatest female fight in MMA history, and for whatever reason, I don't know. It's not feeling that way. It feels like that in my heart. Do you get what I'm saying, Shaun?
I understand.
Can you vibe with me here?
In a year of cookie cutter promotion, this is kind of its typical way to end it, right? Yeah, but it doesn't feel so.
Exactly. Okay, let's talk about the co-main event. You talk about the holiday spirit. You talk about this time of the year, feeling warm and fuzzy inside. Just seeing Khabib Nurmagomedov make weight earlier. He didn't seem drawn out, dehydrated. He's back on the scale. Just seeing him is a great sight. We were here 9 months ago, UFC 209. So disappointed that we weren't going to see him versus Tony Ferguson. So disappointed and somewhat afraid that he didn't make the scale, that he went to the hospital instead. We didn't know about his future. He had back surgery earlier in the summer. Now here he's back. I mean, just the sight alone. Do you agree that it's a sight for sore eyes, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't take the smile off my face. We were at open workouts on Thursday, and it was the first time we saw Khabib really all day. And it was just incredible. It's just seeing him. He's almost become this weirdly mythical figure just because he wasn't around all year. This was seen after what happened in New York last year at 205, and just the dominance that he put on Michael Johnson, telling Dana White in the middle of the fight, "This is why I deserve a title shot." It really seemed like 2017 was going to be the year where we were going to see Khabib really bring everything to fruition. And it just never happened. And not only did it not happen, he just disappeared. So you're right, to see him now at the very end of the year with maybe 1 day, 2 days left in the year, to see him now try to back, and he's actually going to fight. We're going to see Khabib fight. I don't want to jinx it. I really don't, because who knows what's going to happen on Saturday. But we're going to see Khabib fight, and I'm ridiculously excited for it.
So you had a chance to speak to his nutritionist, Tyler Minton, who's turned into one of the great success stories of this past year. I mean, he's working with some of the biggest names, guys like Daniel Cormier and Max Holloway, now Khabib Nurmagomedov, also working with Miles Jury on this card. Share some insight that he shared with you about this weight cut, because really looking at him on the scale, he appeared to be in fantastic shape.
Yeah, you know what, Tyler was very impressed by what he saw with Khabib. He admitted going into it that he was a little hesitant just because Khabib had the warning signs of someone who would be hard to work with. I mean, he's a guy who has had so much success doing things his way. 24-0, doing things his way. He's missed weight in the past. But Tyler said he went in and Khabib was ultra responsive. Khabib was asking questions nonstop, and he came into the camp lighter than he ever has been. And we saw it this week. I mean, he was 4 pounds out with 24 hours to go. He made weight the morning of. It seemed pretty easy. And Khabib seemed in really, really good shape when we saw him.
On the flip side, you have Edson Barboza, who's on a 3-fight winning streak, and he's fought some of the very best in lightweight history, right? I mean, some big names, Gilbert Melendez, Anthony Pettis, has maybe the knockout of the year, right? Earlier this year against Beneil Dariush.
Too crazy.
Well, a contender.
Ngannou's still killed over it.
Fair, but that was quite the knee. Anyway, point is, this is a big spot for him. You can argue he's never had a spot like this before. He's had some big fights against Tony Ferguson and whatnot, but this is an opportunity to steal that shine and really assert himself as the #1 contender. Hello there, Louis Smolka. Best of luck to you, my friend. Cheers, brother. Louis Smolka competing on this card.
Hashtag UFC Hawaii.
We heard some news about UFC Hawaii earlier today.
Covering that.
Yeah, that would be huge. Dana White saying that they're interested. He needs a big win as well. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. In any event.
But we digress.
Yes. Back to Edson Barboza. He also looked to be in great shape today. I don't remember him looking that good, right?
Yeah, he had like a 10-pack.
I was kind of blown away by that. Do you feel like he's somewhat being overlooked here? Like this almost feels like the Khabib coronation party, but like we need to, he's never fought a striker like him. No. RDA back in the day, great striker, but not on Edson's level, right? Is that a cause for concern if you're a team Khabib?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the purest sense of a striker versus grappler matchup.
Yeah.
I mean, in every regard. I mean, you have basically maybe one of the best grapplers that we have ever seen. I mean, I'll go out and say, like, Khabib's grappling is just prodigious. It's world class in every regard. And Edson is just such a dangerous man on the feet, and every round begins on the feet. We saw it with the Michael Johnson fight. I know people like to harp on that, but we did see there's holes in Khabib's striking game and in the way that he approaches his takedowns. There's gonna be opportunities for Edson to really just explode a knee or an elbow or a hard shot onto Khabib during a takedown attempt or during these exchanges, and it only takes one with Edson.
Yeah. So here we are. We're a day away from the return of Khabib, and Khabib told us yesterday that Dana White has promised him a title shot with a victory. And it's interesting, both Edson and Khabib told me yesterday that they want to fight Tony Ferguson next. It's almost like this entire lightweight division has ignored the fact that Conor is still the official champion. They don't believe he's coming back. They're not even gunning for him anymore, even though that's the money fight. Do you believe, though, that if Khabib wins, that he'll get a title shot, or do you think that's just talk?
I have no idea at this point. The lightweight division is so bizarre, man. Like, now we're hearing that Conor might not fight until the summer, and at that point, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, he's basically retired. Like, Tony's the champion. I'm all in agreement with this. If Tony has to defend that that interim title before Conor even returns, despite the fact that he's healthy, what are we doing at this point? Right. Who knows? What does a title shot mean? Is a shot against Tony Ferguson a title shot? Because it's not really, right? So who knows?
Khabib also said that he has 2 fights left at 155. He's got this fight, then Tony, then he's going down to 145. Do you buy this?
I don't buy it.
Okay.
I hope they're messing with us. I mean, again, talking to Tyler Minton, he said that Khabib is pretty serious about this.
Makes no sense.
It makes no sense at all. If anything, go to 170. I hope they're just messing around. Okay. I'm not gonna lie.
Who wins?
I can't go against Khabib time.
Okay.
He might be I've long been on the bandwagon of Tony Ferguson being the best lightweight in the world, and I still stand by that. But I think Khabib is very close, and I just cannot wait to see the way these styles clash. It is fascinating, but I think Khabib will win.
Decision?
No, I think maybe second round TKO.
Wow. On the ground. Ground and pound.
On the ground and pound.
Wow. Interesting. Okay, another big fight on this card with potential future title implications. Former strawweight champion Carla Esparza, first ever strawweight champion, somewhat forgotten in this division due to inactivity, going up against Cynthia Calvillo, who is a darling to the UFC, promoted very much, body armor, Reebok commercial. This could be her fourth UFC victory in 2017, one of the rookies of the year, so to speak. You spoke to both of them yesterday, and they spoke a bit about some kind of confrontation. Can you tell us about this? I know I'm hanging on to something here, but I feel like this fight needs it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of heat there. The way this all kind of started at UFC 214 in California, Cynthia was one of the guest fighters, and media is asking her questions. Who do you want next? At that point, Michelle Watterson and Carla Esparza were the two women ranked above her. So she said, I'd like to shoot upwards. I'll go for those two. I guess Carla heard about it within that same night and showed up to Andre Fili's after party, which Andre Fili is obviously a teammate of Cynthia, a team alpha male, and was very heated about the fact and felt disrespected about the fact that she would get called out. Neither one of them would elaborate much more than that, other than saying it was a little run-in, a little confrontation, and Cynthia basically said, we'll just settle it on Saturday, and that was the extent of it. But.
Intense stare down earlier, right?
Oh, yeah.
Cynthia's got that Diaz brother.
It's that Diaz putting the arms out. I love that.
Sometimes I feel like Carla, at least in her UFC run, has buckled under the pressure a little bit. We saw that with the Joanna fight, and yes, it was a quick turnaround, and I know she had the big win over Rose Namajunas, but it definitely seems like she has to battle something up here. She doesn't want to do a lot of media going into her fights. She doesn't want to talk about title shots. She doesn't want to talk about Rose. I believe she told you she'd even watch the fight where Rose knocked out Joanna, right?
Yeah, she said she still hasn't watched that fight.
Yeah, which is somewhat shocking to me when you know the results. She has a win over Rose. In any event, what are you expecting to see out of Carla? What are you expecting to see out of both of them tomorrow?
That's a good question, because I think both of them are in a similar spot stylistically in regards to they're both grapplers, and Carla is more of a wrestler than a grappler. I mean, she likes to just get in top control and kind of sit in top control. She's not very active offensively. Whereas Cynthia, more of scrambling, going for submissions, trying to be active down there. But neither of them are very, very accomplished strikers. So it could be kind of interesting to see how it plays out. But that being said, I think Cynthia was basically one of the biggest losers of the Rose JJ outcome. Because, I mean, if you look at how that division was right before that fight, basically the top four women or top five women had already lost to JJ. At that point, Cynthia, with the win over Carla, might have gotten a title shot at this point if she beats her tomorrow. But now it's just blown wide open, and it's kind of a free-for-all again. So I think she's still a few fights away. But it's still, I mean, whoever wins this, I think, gets pushed back into that conversation.
Who wins?
I'm going to go with Cynthia. I just feel like, I don't know, it's been weird seeing Carla since the JJ fight. It seems like she I don't want to say a fighter lacks confidence, because that's projecting. I mean, you don't know what's in their head. But it just seems like there's a lot of panic wrestling, and anytime there's a striking exchange, she's just diving desperately for takedowns and stuff. I just don't see her being able to get it done.
Lest we forget the return of the natural-born killer, Carlos Condit. I talked earlier about how nice it was to see Khabib back. It is equally nice to see Carlos Condit back. He has not fought since August of 2016. I remember 2 years ago, the year-end or New Year's event, if you will, was technically a New Year event against Robbie Lawler. I thought he won. I thought he deserved to win. I thought he should have been crowned the welterweight champion. He's back after a quasi-retirement. He never actually said it, but he definitely took a break from MMA. Do you like this matchup for him? A matchup against Neil Magny, who seems to be one of those guys in the welterweight division who a lot of welterweights like to call out, who, they like to fight to sort of build up their own confidence. Is this the kind of fight, when you were thinking about the return of Carlos Condit, that you felt was perfect for his return?
Oh, the blood gods are so happy right now waiting for this. It is so nice to have the natural-born killer back. I agree with you. I thought he won that Robbie Lawler fight. I thought he should have been welterweight champion. It seemed like the turnaround to go right into Damian Maia. It's just something was missing for him, and it seems like he may have rediscovered it. I mean, talking to his coaches and just people around him throughout the week, they say that they swear that he is full in this. It is not. There's no doubts about his desire, how whether he's in this or not. it seems like that fire is back in him, and that is exciting to me. And Neil Magny is a guy who's a very interesting matchup for him, because they both are ultra tall, ultra lanky strikers, and with incredible cardio, both of them. So it seems like this could really mesh into a fun fight.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Who wins? Does Carlos get back on track?
It really depends on the Carlos that we're gonna see. I mean, if this is a Carlos who's half in, half out, I don't know that things are gonna go well with him. This is a tough game to do that. But if everyone is to be believed and he really does want to do this, I think Carlos takes it.
This card has taken some hits. We were supposed to see Jimmy Rivera against Dominic Cruz. That turned into Jimmy Rivera versus John Lineker, and that turned into no fight. John Lineker had a tooth infection. We found out a little under a week ago. They tried to salvage his fight. They went through some options. None of them came to fruition, so he's off the card. We were also supposed to get Kamaru Usman against Emil Mek. That fight's not happening. We were all supposed to have Gokhan Saki on the card, and that's not happening. I'm not trying to depress you, but as a result, Mark J. Casey and Dan Hooker are now on the main card. Who's your pick in that after that long diatribe?
I'll go with Dia Casey. I think this is an interesting fight. Dan Hooker has looked, I mean, he only had one fight back at lightweight against Ross Pearson, but he looked tremendous in that. And speaking to him on Thursday, he said, you know, it'd take $1 million for me to get back. He said he basically fights better drunk than he would at featherweight. He just felt foggy, and when he would watch it back, he didn't see himself there. That being said, I think Dia Casey, I mean, he had a really close fight with Drakkar Klose, who I think is another really good prospect. So I don't take too much away from him for losing that. I think Dia Casey gets it done.
Dan Zapruder Hooker with the
with the boomerang video.
Yeah, with the get of the year. Got the Fabricio Verdum, Colby Covington boomerang video. Any other fight you want to highlight before we go? It's a nice little 10-fight card. Any other fight that you're looking forward to?
It is. It's a nice little compact card. There's not a lot of dead space. I mean, there's a couple. I mean, Tim Elliott, he's been through a lot these past couple of weeks, you know, with what happened, I think, what was it, UFC 217? Or 218, I'm sorry. Yeah. And then, you know, the death of Robert Follis.
It was actually Winnipeg.
Winnipeg, yeah, I'm sorry. And then the death of Robert Follis right afterwards. He's been through a lot. But this is an important fight for him against Mark De La Rosa, who...
History. Tell them about the history, Shaun.
The first married couple to be in the UFC, regardless of whether people want to argue with that.
Mark and Montana, they were up on the stage together. Yeah. Little kiss, it was beautiful.
Yeah, and then there's a couple. I mean, Miles Jury versus Rick Glenn, that's a really good fight. We haven't seen much of Miles at featherweight, but he looked really good in you know, his only appearance. So there's some fun fights here.
It is the most wonderful time of the year. Let's be honest, it has been somewhat of a forgettable year for the UFC, although the fourth quarter has been strong.
It's picked up.
Opportunity on Saturday night to finish 2017 strong and then head into 2018, and we found out earlier today they're going to do it big in 2018. It's their 25th anniversary. They've got a new logo, a bunch of fights coming up. This is exciting stuff for the UFC. I feel like the fortunes are going to change for the Ultimate Fighting Championship beginning on Saturday night. One of the greatest fights in female MMA history, if not the greatest. Two of the greatest of all time. Chris Cyborg hasn't lost in a decade. Arguably the greatest of all time against Holly Holm, greatest boxer to turn into MMA fighter. She can make history. First female in MMA history to hold 2 belts in 2 different weight classes. Wins over Cyborg and Ronda Rousey. This is big time stuff. Get excited, folks. It's happening on Saturday here, Las Vegas, T-Mobile Arena. We're counting down the hours. We appreciate you watching our coverage up until this point. We'll see you on Saturday after the fights. Enjoy them. We'll talk to you on Saturday night. Peace.
Khabib.